Hey, what's up everyone? Ragey Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about the get woke, go broke mentality, and how it pertains to quote-unquote fighting back. I'm actually getting kind of annoyed at all the people out there saying that we need to not be defeatist and fight back instead of letting companies that get woke go broke. They keep saying that if we advocate for just letting companies that have been taken over by the SJW cancer die, then we are somehow giving up. And this is completely wrong. To prove this, I have to ask, how is what we are doing not fighting back in the only way we have left available to us once it gets that far? We are already getting pretty vocal about what we actually want and what we are willing to spend money on, which I admit was a problem we had a long time ago back when we were the so-called silent majority. Because let's face it, if you are silent and the other side is constantly whining, nobody is going to listen to you because, well, you're not saying anything, and the other side's going to get everything they want because no one's opposing them. It's just common sense. So knowing that, once a company pretty much tells us to our face, hey, we are getting woke, you are not our customers anymore, what other way to fight back is there other than telling them, okay, fine. In that case, we're done talking with our mouths and we'll move on to talking with our wallets until you get the point. And speaking of points, at the point where a company turns on its consumers, as far as I'm concerned, the fight for that specific company is already lost, and the only hope we have of saving them is if whoever runs the company sees the massive plunge in profits and decides to replace the leadership instead of shuttering the whole company. And to be quite honest here, when it gets that bad, the only way to regain your consumers' trust is to replace literally everybody who had anything to do with the decision to turn on the customers. And this is simply because if any of them are allowed to stay on, us customers will always be aware that they have someone with a track record of backstabbing their own customers still in a position of power, and we understandably would be very reluctant to trust them again. So as you can imagine, this is extremely rare because the vast majority of the time those in charge are the ones who ultimately made the decision, and they sure as hell ain't gonna sacrifice themselves to potentially save a company that they will no longer have any investment in. So unfortunately for all the fanboys out there, once the infection gets that bad, it's pretty much terminal. May as well just put them out of their misery now as opposed to watching them fumble around for a few years before they are unceremoniously shut down after multiple failures, and ruining a few more of your beloved properties in the process. I can understand why people get worked up over the possibility of their favorite companies and or properties going down, and insist on fighting to the bitter end to save them, but what I don't understand is how they can have loyalty to a brand that stabbed them in the back. What a lot of people apparently don't understand is that the leadership and, in general, employees in companies change. A lot. For example, I know full well that the great BioWare from my childhood is not the shitty BioWare of current year. I'd be surprised if even a single original member of BioWare in their golden age is still employed at the company right now. In current year, it's literally just a bunch of completely new and different people wearing BioWare skin with EA pulling all the strings, and relying entirely on their previously good reputation and the loyalty of nostalgic fanboys to stay afloat. And this allows them and other companies going through the same thing to keep putting out stinkers year after year before finally feeling the effects. Now, I for one stay loyal to a company or brand only as long as they provide me with the quality I want. As I went over in a previous video, loyalty is a two-way street. The first time they give me a stinker, I'd no longer trust that their stuff will just always be good. Now, before you freak out, I don't drop them entirely, but I'm no longer gonna trust them enough to pre-order anything from them, and everything they put out, I will wait for reviews from people I actually do trust before buying in. Now, if you release multiple stinkers in a row, then regardless of how many years I've been a loyal customer, Blizzard, I'm not touching any of their products again unless literally everybody whose opinion I actually trust is giving a recent product of theirs absolutely glowing reviews. And that's what I have to say about the companies, but next up we got the properties themselves that these companies own. And when it comes to these, I'm not going to say to give up on them and find something else, even though it is a true statement to point out that all good things must come to an end. But what I will say is that once the company that owns your favorite property has a terminal cancer infection, the best thing we can do for the property you love so much is, funny enough, to put the company out of its misery as fast as possible. This being so they can do as little damage as possible to the property you love as they are going down. Taking them down will lead to all of their properties being auctioned off, and hopefully someone much better and with more respect for the source material will get the property you love next. This doesn't always end well, but it's the best chance you have once things get that bad. So with all of that hopefully explaining my mindset going into this, I believe the best way to fight at that point is to use the infected company as an example to all the others as to what will happen when they get woke. And I've been advocating for this approach since way back in Gamergate, or hell, even before Gamergate became an official thing. Treat the infection like the cancer it is, cut it off, and if you must, rebuild something new. That's an advantage we have, you know. The other side are a bunch of parasites. They can't create. They can only infect something other people have created and destroy it. We can create, though. So just cut them off, quarantine them, create something better, and then just make damn sure they can't get back in. It's the only way. Letting companies that get woke go broke is the only way to get the point across to everybody else who either isn't infected yet or who is currently fighting their own infection and needs motivation. The fact is, companies make the decisions they do because they think it will lead to more profits. They sit around and think things like, oh hey, this social justice crap seems to be all the rage now among the young people. Everyone is talking about it, so if we jump in on this, we'll be popular. And on top of that, extra bonus, we won't be getting called Nazis all over the media either. Oh my god, we're gonna win. There's no downside here. Except for the part where you don't make anything people want anymore and go broke, but other than that, no downside. So basically what I'm saying here is, quite often these decision makers may not be ideologues themselves, but they simply fall for the propaganda and misinformation campaigns being directed at them by the ideologues. And you guys know what the best way to shut down propaganda and misinformation is. That's right, reality. Yes, reality. Especially if it bites them directly in the ass. The reality that if they turn on their own customers and stop giving them what they want in order to appeal to a very loud group that's proven to never put their money where their mouth is, then they will lose everything. The reality that if they get woke, they will indeed go broke. This is not a joke. And luckily for us, this is normally a downside, but in this case it's a positive. Companies as a whole, especially the large ones, are pretty damn scared of change. And even if they're not outright resistant to it, they often adopt a wait-and-see approach. So pretty much once all of those companies waiting to see what happens see all of these trailblazers getting blown up in a minefield and going broke, they will most likely refuse to walk down that same path themselves. And as a real-world example, I have really high hopes that we will see exactly this happening with Dead or Alive 6 compared to Soul Calibur 6. Koei Tecmo decided to try to clean up their game and make it more appealing to mainstream esports, and they did this by greatly reducing the fan service in the game, which pretty much was the main selling point for a lot of players, let's be honest here, and replaced it with Riona. Yeah, the boobs don't jiggle anymore and the women are less sexy, but instead you can now beat them to a bloody pulp. That's what you guys wanted, right? You just wanted to beat your waifus bloody. Hell, while we're doing this, while we're at it, why not just make the next Senran Kagura game super realistic, and since they're using weapons and all, let's add some dismemberment and have all the characters writhing in pain on the ground as they clutch their new stumps. That's what all the fans of the series want to see, right? #realism for the win! Yeah, in case it's not obvious by my tone, this is a disaster just waiting to happen. Especially since, right before this, Koei Tecmo just torpedoed their other major cash cow, that being the Dynasty Warriors franchise, when they released the absolutely god-awful Dynasty Warriors 9. Dead or Alive is their last major cash cow. If they also destroy this one, then we may well see them literally go broke. Though I will admit in this case it's not just a result of getting woke, this is just all-around incompetence on their part. And meanwhile, on the flip side, you have Soul Calibur 6, which insists on staying the course and giving the fans what they want in both the fan service and gameplay arenas. Which, as an aside, is honestly pretty damn funny because Soul Calibur seems a lot more popular with the FGC and esports than Dead or Alive does, even with more fan service. It's almost as if all the esports and FGC communities really care about is that the gameplay is decent, and every character on the roster has at least one costume that won't cause the Pearl Clutchers to faint when it shows up on primetime TV. And any fan service above that they don't particularly care about one way or another, and it brings in even more fans that aren't part of these communities. Because that's something you have to realize. You have to consider that the vast majority of fighting game sales are to casual players that aren't even interested in the FGC. Casual players who may actually care more about the fan service than the gameplay, which you're now just completely alienating. Cause yeah, Dead or Alive just threw it all away. I'm sure Bandai Namco appreciates it though. All those fan service seeking gamers that were previously Dead or Alive loyalists will just move to Soul Calibur instead. Especially with the character creator, by the way. God, I love the character creator in the Soul Calibur games. You can make your own custom waifu, how awesome is that? And once these gamers taste the superior gameplay that Soul Calibur has to offer, they'll have no reason to go back. Even if Koei Tecmo flip-flops again like they did with Dead or Alive 5. Cause we know even if they put all the fan service and boob jiggle back in, it'll be as paid DLC. Yeah, no, if you want to censor a game, make the censorship be paid DLC. That's fine. Anything other than that though, you could go get bent. So while predictably Soul Calibur 6 has been getting hammered by the drama rags that call themselves the gaming media, it's been gaining a lot of goodwill among the actual community. So without even changing anything of their strategy, Bandai Namco pretty much have both the FGC and casual markets locked down from the look of it. Though we will definitely have to wait a few months to verify, but early reports are looking good for Soul Calibur, and meanwhile Dead or Alive is in full-blown damage control mode. All Bandai Namco had to do was sit back and watch their enemy make a mistake and not interrupt. Napoleon would be proud. And should Koei Tecmo actually go broke from this, and as I said earlier, they very well might given how they've already destroyed Dynasty Warriors, if this happens, and we're lucky, maybe Bandai Namco will end up buying the rights to Dead or Alive and bring back the original team which Koei Tecmo chased off. At that point, our final victory will be complete. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.